Section 4.2.RA-5. A student at a junior college conducted a survey of 20 randomly selected full-time students to determine the relation between the number of hours of video games playing each week, X, and grade point average, Y. She found that a linear relation exists between two variables. The least squares regression line that describes this relation is y, which is equal to negative 0.0533x plus 2.9538. In part A, we want to predict the grade point average of a student who plays video games 8 hours per week. To predict the grade point average, we're going to substitute 8 for x in the equation for the least squares regression line and calculate the value of y. So here we have y, which is equal to negative 0.0533. We're going to substitute 8 in for x and then add 2.9538. We multiply here, we get y is equal to negative 0.4264 plus 2.9538. And we get a y value rounded to 2 decimal places to equal 2.53. So a student who plays video games 8 hours per week would have a 2.53 grade point average. In part B, we want to interpret the slope. Now, the slope tells us how much a student's grade point average will change for each hour per week spent playing video games. Note that the slope is negative. This means that for every additional hour per week that a student plays video games, the student's grade point average will decrease. So the amount of the decrease is the absolute value of the slope of the regression line. So here is the slope, negative 0.0533. So we can say that for every additional hour per week that a student spends playing video games, his or her grade point average will decrease by 0.0533. In part C, it says, if appropriate, interpret the y-intercept. Well, the y-intercept gives the value of a line at x equals 0. So if we plug 0 into our regression line, we'd get negative 0.533 times 0. So we get 0 plus 2.9538. Round that to 2 decimal places, y would equal 2.95. So that would give the grade point average. So the variable x represents the number of hours per week that a student spends playing video games. So the y-intercept of the regression line must be the predicted grade point average for a student who plays no video games. In part D, a student who plays video games 7 hours per week has a grade point average of 2.69. Is the student's grade point average above or below average among all students who play video games 7 hours per week? What we're going to do is we're going to start by substituting 7 for x in the regression line equation and then calculating the value of y. So plugging in 7, we get negative 0.0533 times 7 plus 2.9538. Multiply that number by 7, we get negative 0.3731 plus 2.9538. When we combine those, we get y, which is equal to 2.58. Now we got to compare this 2.58 number to the grade point average here of 2.69. So comparing the student's grade point average with the one determined by the equation, since 2.69 is greater than 2.58, the student's grade point average is above average among all students who play video games 7 hours per week.